I'm always fascinated when I get an opportunity to connect with people that really get it, especially when it comes to leadership in sales and business development.
One of my pet peeves is hearing a business owner say, "Oh, well, I don't sell," or I don't do sales. It's like, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I would say what's scarier than a no is a maybe. Anyone who's in sales could probably.
Drew Norton ended up on my radar a few months back. He has been so gracious. We've had a couple of issues trying to get schedules aligned, all on my end because of some craziness I've got going on with my dad and just healthcare situation, right? Trying to be a caregiver from a distance is not for the weak at heart. But Drew has been so amazingly kind and gracious to work with me in the schedule. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to have a conversation. Drew actually has a website called the sales.theeverydayleader.co. He is a speaker, he is a coach, a consultant, and I think a real expert in the sales field. I am super anxious to learn what I can from him because he knows his stuff really well. He's got a really compelling story. You're going to want to hang around for it as to, what he's learned and sort of how it some personal tragedy has kind of informed the kind of leader he is and the kind of approach he's taken to his career and kind of family man he is. He is a super, super sharp guy. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to have him on the show. You can tell I'm actually not in studio today because have a small plumbing issue that needed to be taken care of. So hopefully we don't have plumber crack coming through the back door here. But anyway, I appreciated Drew being flexible on that as well. So I'm excited to get this thing going. So with no further ado, let's dive into this interview with Drew Norton. Well, Drew Norton, welcome to the Ripple Effect Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to join you and your listeners today.
Well, we are excited to have you for sure. You and I have been trying to put this together for a couple of months, and I want to just first and foremost publicly thank you for your patience as I was working through some challenges with my dad, and it just kind of made my schedule sort of not my own. So I really appreciate the flexibility because I think we originally started having conversations in the early stages of spring. So
Yeah,
what comes to finally what comes to fruition, and patience paid off for us both. So I really appreciate you making the time.
yeah. No, thank you. And it happens. So
Yeah,
life's life, and yeah, glad we're able to make this work.
absolutely. Well, so Drew, I would love to start with you've done so much with your career, and I know that your website really gears around helping people understand from a coaching and consulting perspective, but you've really done a deep dive into what it takes to be a really good sales professional. And I'm curious, what sort of what was it in your background that sort of led you down that path, sales in general, but
Yeah.
then really taking what your experience is from what you've done to now help educate people about how to go out and be better at what they do to sell their products and services?
Yeah, if you'd asked me, I would have never told you was going to have a career in sales or be helping other sales professionals at any point in my life. Like that was not ever in my dreams or future. And the short version, I guess, of this would be in in college, I had friends that went out and did door to door summer sales, and they got me into that. And I thought, well, if you could do it, I can do it. And what I what I really loved initially with sales was, oh, if I work really hard at this, I'm not paid an hourly wage. I'm
Yeah.
paid by commission, and which double-edged sword for some. It's not a great thing, and I always viewed myself as someone. Hey, I'm going to work hard,
Yep.
and so I loved as a college kid going, hey, if I work twice as hard as the guy next to me, I'll make twice as much instead of the same amount or 10
Yeah.
cents an
Yeah.
hour more. And so that's what got me hooked and got me started. And the funny thing is I never viewed myself as a salesperson or identified that way. Like if you asked me what I did, it was anything and everything but sales.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
just found myself not just in sales, but also in leadership roles. And over time, just really came to believe, no, selling is noble. Like selling's a beautiful thing. It's
Yeah.
something that helps other people and it drives all business. And so I think for me, my title and what I go by on social media is the everyday sales leader. It's just this idea that I feel like an everyday guy who's just gotten into sales and leadership, and that anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Anyone can get good at sales. Anyone can become a leader, and you can do that regardless of your title.
I love that. You and I have a very similar philosophy. Although when I got into sales, I thought I really sucked at sales, right? What I was really good at was connecting with people and trying to get them to speak before, even pitching whatever product or service I might have been, involved in at the time, but really trying to solve a problem and actually coming in and just trying to be the most authentic person possible. And what really struck me about your website and sort of your title is like sales is noble. I've interviewed a lot of sales professionals along the way, a lot of people that have done great things, grown it, and built amazing businesses. But there's always this like sort of predisposition to sales that it's kind of like a dirty word, right? It's kind of like, people kind of like turn their nose up at it. And it's kind of funny because in comparison, you're like, hey, let's embrace it. Let's talk about what it
Yeah,
can be and where you could take it versus people are like, yeah, it's kind of like I got to do it or I had a natural affinity to be good at it. So I just kind of did it and I rolled that into becoming a business owner or entrepreneur. But there's still this like little tinge of like embarrassment about it. And I always felt like sales was just problem solving. And if you did it well, you were actually walking away not just with a client or a customer, but you were walking away with people that really cared about you and had admiration for you helping them and potentially became lifelong friends.
yeah. I feel like in society, it's kind of become a dirty word. One of my pet peeves is hearing a business owner say, "Oh, well, I don't sell," or I don't do sales." It's like, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You're
Used
every
to.
day you're
Yep.
looking to influence people to buy your product or service, especially if it's for those that are the right fit. So for me, a lot of it I found is the mindset too. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, it's kind of just what they think about it, and if they can
Yeah.
reframe that, they can unlock a lot of power for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced it. I know I have in my consulting and coaching days with, senior leadership that says, that's not me. It's like, well, then you got a business that's probably on limited time because you have to be the best salesperson, and you have to be the number one cheerleader. You have to be the best marketer. But really, sales, begins and ends with how your team sees what you do, whether you're a CEO or COO or on the executive team the skill sets that you have to possess in order to be good and truly successful to get your product or service out there. You got to understand that that is sales, that embraces it. What do you encounter when you talk to companies that maybe have that leadership mindset that's like, ah, that's not us, that's I that's somebody else on the team or whatever. How do you get people to think about it from a kind of a paradigm shift?
Yeah, well, one of the other things I like to also say is sales is life, and I'm going to answer that. I'm going to get to that question in a second, but
Sure.
start here. Yeah, I I don't believe you can't get better at sales and not see it impact every area of your life.
Yeah.
You'll become a
Yeah.
better leader. You become a better father, a better husband, a better spouse. You're selling when you having the discussion with your kids why they need to go to bed on time at night. You're selling your team when you talk about, hey, this is the vision of where we're going to go and what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. And so I think, but to answer the question, I think some of it just comes back to what people interpret sales as.
Yeah.
The analogy I hear the most is the used car salesman, which
Yeah.
I feel bad because I love my used car salesman, and I've had bad experiences with car salesmen before, so I understand why that is out there. And I think that often it's viewed that, hey, sales is twisting arms, it's pushing people to do things they don't want to do,
Yeah.
when I really believe it's just how do I help someone discover that they need to make a change. And if it's not with me, like, I tell them that,
Yeah.
and that's okay. You to say, hey, this isn't for you. And in fact, it saves a lot of time sometimes when when a business owner, an entrepreneur, a sales professional says, hey, this isn't the right product for you. let's
Right.
let's just
Well, let me
stop.
be a resource if I can and guide you to the,
Right.
a place or a company or a platform that makes better sense for you. And and you walk away with your head held high because you still did something what I would call a positive ripple, right? You make, positive inroad, and you never know where that'll come back. I mean, when I started in my early days, I was in copier sales. Nobody wants to talk to the copier salesman, especially shy and introverted copier salesman. It was a flipping disaster. And then somehow, some way, I decided, well, I want to get into that not only as a sales rep, but I became, a Xerox agent. So I was the owner, kind of like the State Farm guy, repping a product that was very expensive, way higher than any of our competitors. And 9 times out of 10, where I found my best inroads was actually helping people connect as to why they didn't want to do business with Xerox because it wasn't the right fit, budget wise or whatever. But I was always leading them down. Hey, these are the things you need to look for when you're talking to, these other competitors or these dealers. And it was amazing how many of those companies actually ended up coming back to me within a year or two. And I ended up parlaying that into owning a dealership for a different manufacturer about 5, 6 years later. And people did business with me because they had done business with me before, and they just knew I was a straight
Yeah.
shooter, and I was committed to helping, right? And there's nothing sexy about a copier, a fax machine, or a printer, not in any way, shape, or form at all. But solving a problem about getting a report out and having it come across professional and reducing your spend because you have a product that operates more efficiently. Now, those are things that people like can hang their hat on. And our competition would just be all about speeds and feeds, right? Oh, we're so much better than this, or we're so much better than that. And I had to figure out, and this was my Achilles heel, is being I'm extremely introverted and shy. Part of the reason I wrote my book and do what I do with Ripple is because I kind of thought I was just serving like a really small market that was like me. And what I actually found is there's a big market of people that just thought they had to follow a particular, sort of script and approach, especially in the sales field. And they come across as inauthentic and or robotic or just like they don't care. And I think my strength, and it sounds like it is for you as well, is trying to figure out how to take what nobody really wanted to talk about and figure out a way to get them to want to talk about it because you were solving a problem. And parlayed that into a lot of success, and then moved that into other areas of the business that I concentrated on after I got out of office equipment, thank God. But at the end of the day, it was a different experience. How did, when you came into the sales as a career, how was it that you sort of realized, hey, wait, I've got a talent for this, but I want to do it maybe a little bit different than what the script says or what the boss said. This is the tried and true methodology, kid.
Yeah, like I said originally, I thought, hey, I'm doing good at this just because I work hard.
Yeah.
And I do remember after I sold a couple summers, I went into the insurance business for a while. My boss, I ended up leading a couple of his managing and leading a couple of his offices. I remember him telling me, hey, and then I was like just an intern at the time in college, and he made a comment about, hey, you're the best person I've ever had on the phones. And I was thinking, I'm just having good conversations with people. I
Yeah.
didn't think I was doing anything amazing. And that was maybe one of the first times I'd heard that. And I did well at sales, but once again, I constantly downplayed my abilities and just focused on the effort I was
Sure.
putting into things. And couple sales career changes later, I ended up one year deciding I love real estate. I do some real estate investing and was kind of dabbling in both and running a sales team. And I said, hey, I wonder if I just went all in and gave it my best effort this year, what it would look like, and ended up leading the company in sales. We had over 100 sales reps in the company.
Wow.
The next 2 years, I had the largest team in our organization, and started to tell myself, oh, maybe you are good at this too. Like maybe it's not just the effort. Like that's a big part of it, especially early on when you're new to sales. And then I started to realize, hey, it's the way you do things and the beliefs you have about it. And it honestly took some coaching of my own with a mentor to help me kind of break free and see, hey, I want to help others see this in themselves or see that they can do these things too.
Yeah. How do you see the industry? I mean, I know it's vastly different depending on what you happen to be as a salesperson representing, right? But how do you see like the change of social media and the technology? Is it helping or is it hindering when prospects are out evaluating, whatever it is they're researching, whether you're, buying a new car, you're thinking about buying a house, or you're speculating in, investment property, or you're still trying to sell, some sort of, product. What do you
Yeah.
see as the impact there, and how's that informed or changed how you approach your work?
Yeah. I see on the, I don't know if I want to call it the lower end. Um, I see more on just actual products with between how everything's going online, marketing, AI, the ease to get information and access information.
Yeah.
I see a lot of simpler products where marketing is going to do most of the work. I do believe marketing and sales are actually different,
Yes.
and good marketing can make sales really easy. And so I see the need for salespeople in certain industries and certain areas becoming less and less. I mean, you can even see it like with Tesla. You don't talk to a car salesman
Yeah,
anymore. You go
that's
online
true.
and you order a car. Um, and I do think in an age of I think those that are selling more complex services, ideas, high ticket offers, I think sales is going to become a more and more valuable skill set. Because I think people are one, they're looking for more authenticity,
Yeah.
and people want to have a conversation with someone they can trust, especially when you get into higher ticket offerings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that adage that we've all grown up with, right? You think it's probably overused, but it's still true today is, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And if you're not
Mm-hmm.
committed to getting to know those people or figure out what their problems are, have conversations, if you just show up with the corporate brochure, or you're, responding to a lead form that gets filled out on the website, and you're just talking at them, not, really trying to engage them in any level of conversation. And at least in my experience, salespeople, I think, and I'd be curious to see what your take is. I've always told people when I've consulted with organizations is there's two approaches to sales, right? You have salespeople who are basically, if nothing else, they're not invested. They can be order takers. They are, I'm sure they're all very nice people, and they're invested somewhat in what they're doing, but they really don't have any personal investment in who they're helping, and there's not an authenticity to it. And I think clients or prospective clients feel that. And then a sales professional actually never has to really close, because it's based on conversation, and you're leading them down the path of, hey, you explained or shared a problem or a concern or an issue or a challenge with the current vendor. And here's a couple of ways that we might be able to support you and help you a little bit differently. And here's a few examples that could give you some confidence in terms of what you get when you come to work, or come work with us, or agree to do business with us. And sales professionals really never have to truly close in that capacity. I'm curious
Yeah.
your take on that.
Yeah, I used to believe that, like early in my sales career, I thought it's about having this like closing line at the end,
Yeah,
or being able to just really steamroll objections when you offer the close. Not to say that there isn't a place for handling concerns with
sure.
people at the end. And I've come to find that discovery is where all the magic happens.
Yeah,
The better I do, I used to think that discovery was about me, and I've found it's really about them. It's helping them
yeah,
realize, hey, I've got to make a change. If I stay where I'm at, if I keep doing what I'm doing, it doesn't work for me, and I've got to do something different.
yeah,
And if you've done a great job of positioning yourself as the person who can be trusted, um, and as the one who can provide that solution, makes it just an invitation to me. It doesn't have to be a close. We just invite them to start moving forward.
yeah. Well, I'm curious, like, not to reveal any super secrets that you might have in terms of how you work with companies today, but I've got to think that you probably face a lot of the challenges, environments that you either speak at, or, for companies you work with and consult and coach. There's a harder and harder time of getting in the door, even if you're like trying to just grow your business and you've got a sales team, right? Because it feels like nobody answers their phone anymore. Nobody
Right.
responds to emails. What do you do to combat that when you're talking to clients that are like, we're putting a lot of great stuff out there, but nothing is sticking. Nobody's returning our calls. Nobody really wants to engage in conversation. What do you recommend to business owners that are like, we got something great, we have something magical that people need to know about, but we can't get the attention to even get the sales conversation started?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, and I'd ask a follow-up question, and I guess part of what I'd want to know, if that was a question someone was asking, is that something that they've noticed from day one, or is that a change they've noticed happening?
Yeah.
Because I think that would be important to find out if it's, and for both of those, if day one they're saying that from the start of their business, it's like, hey, maybe we haven't done a good enough job at helping people see the value in our product. Maybe we think it's more valuable than it is. Maybe we haven't done a good job of. A lot of times we're, and this doesn't directly answer it, but we're too focused on the features of the product and not how it
Yeah.
actually benefits the customer.
Yeah.
And so we're selling what it can do, like, or what the features are of the product, but not how it actually can create change in a business, in a person's life, and for an organization. And so some of that's just marketing, going back to marketing and making
Yeah.
sure your marketing is speaking to the pain of what your clients need. And at the same time, it's funny. I like to browse Reddit and the sales forums on Reddit, and you get some people complaining, hey, I'm making all these calls a day and not seeing any success. And then I see others that say, yeah, I'm making calls every day and I'm seeing tons of success.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, as far as picking up the phone, if you're doing outbound dials, I think that is probably getting a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
And I think there's things you can do to still be successful. I mean, the way you start the conversation and letting someone feel comfortable right off the bat. I love Chris Voss's start using no-oriented questions.
Yeah.
Sometimes just starting with letting somebody be able to tell you no right off the bat
Yep.
helps them feel like they're more in control, and improves response rates often on calls. And there are new challenges that I think are going to always be coming in sales.
Hey Ripplers, before we jump back in, I want to take a quick moment to share 2 ways you can go even deeper with us. First, if you're enjoying this podcast, you'll love our paid subscription offers on both Substack and Patreon. That is where you'll get exclusive content, behind the scenes insights, and extra resources about connections and relationships that you won't read anywhere else, plus a few little other ditties. It's a great way to support the show and stay connected between episodes. And let's be honest, if you're craving something even more immersive, and who isn't, check out our Connect and Grow Ripple coaching program. Man, this is a full year of coaching, content, and community designed to help you become a more engaged connector and leader in both life and business. I love this program. I think you will too. You'll join a vibrant community of like-minded Ripplers to gain access to master classes led by dynamic experts, including me, attend live workshops, group coaching sessions, and get the accountability and actionable strategies you need to build more meaningful relationships to create an even bigger ripple effect out there in the world, which who doesn't want that? You can find the links in the show notes to sign up today. Hope to see you over there. Ripple on. You made me think of a good friend that I had on the podcast not too long ago. Her name's Andrea Waltz. Her and her husband Richard Fenton wrote a book called Go for No, and they
Yeah.
flipped it. They flipped the script a little bit by, if you are a numbers, I mean, and that's what sales is, right? It's the number of appointments that you can have. It's the number of meetings that you can set up. It's the number of calls that you're going to make. There is still, I don't think that's ever going to go away. It may be a little more difficult. Those challenges might be a little harder to overcome, but activity, creates opportunity. And one of the things that I really liked about their book was they, used it as a parable form, but really at the end of the day, it was about, rather than look at no as a rejection, it's just closer to the yes. But really, you're striving for as many no's as you can have in a day if you're an outbound sales rep, or you're knocking on doors. If people still, do that a lot. Thankfully, I don't have to do that anymore, but man, that was painful. But, it's about how many times people tell you no, getting you to focus on the wins that you eventually have. And ultimately, at the end of the day, no doesn't need to be no forever. It just means no, not right now. Or it gives you as a sales professional the understanding, like, okay, well, maybe that, maybe my opener or maybe my question didn't land, or it didn't quite, get them to look through the lens of why they would want to address this problem, or maybe want to make a change of some kind. And I like how they turn that process into a way that helps salespeople who probably could be otherwise really, really dejected because all they hear is rejection, into no, that's actually a positive. That's good.
Yeah.
You can come back to that later. You haven't completely shut that door, but at the end of the day, you're one step closer to trying to find the right opportunity and you're always learning. You're right, adapting and adjusting, and you kind of say, hey, my calls this morning weren't that great, but what am I going to do to pick it up this afternoon and maybe try a different approach or a different tactic, ask a better question, just to get people into conversation, like you said.
Yeah, in fact, I would say what's scarier than a no is a maybe. Anyone who's in sales could probably admit that, because then you're
Yeah,
just left chasing people. And
yeah,
I would rather create a space that a client feels like they can just tell you no
yeah,
if it's
yeah.
not a fit.
I agree
And
wholeheartedly. What?
yeah, no, I love that idea of just embracing no. I think it's
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah, yeah. I mean, because we get told no all the time, right? And like you said, and you touched on, tell people this all the time, and I liked how you sort of you kind of laid it out, which is if you actually think about your life, you are selling all the time. You're selling your kids to, make their bed and do their chores. You're selling your wife why you want to go to one movie versus another on date night, or where to go in terms of, where to eat for the restaurant. You're working with your neighbors to, negotiate how to trim the trees so that everybody kind of feels like they got what they deserved. And, your community, your involvement, even how you get your drink made at Starbucks is a little bit of a sales job to a certain degree. And everybody, when they can look at it through that, be like, you're right. Actually, whether I'm trying to encourage somebody to come join the company and recruit them, that's a sales job, right? And how I build my brand, or how I get it out there, or how I get people to think about it. You're going through the motions of a very understanding sales position. Have you, I'm sure you've experienced many times where people are like, just like that executive set, like, oh, I don't sell, that's somebody else's job. But what's that feel like when you actually get them to turn, on the dime and be like, dude, you're right. I mean, I actually am kind of selling, maybe I need to do it more for my company.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. Some of the sales reps I've led over the years, some of the best ones weren't even the most skillful or the most articulate. Often it was like they believed in themselves, they believed in their product, they believed in their service. Like I have one guy I can think of in particular that I would never send a new representative out to like shadow or follow him, because he was almost too all over the place and so unstructured that like it gave me anxiety. um, and like he was just so passionate about what he did, about how he would take care of people, about how he would help them, that I think it overcame a lot of deficiencies
Sure.
that he might have had otherwise. Where it's kind of back to what you're saying. You can have the perfect sales script, and if you don't, if you're apprehensive, prospects will feel that.
Oh yeah.
They'll know that. They'll sense it. So I believe a lot of that is just reprogramming the way you look at it. And I've found sometimes it's okay if you don't like the word sales, label yourself something else. Like I'm a
Yeah.
value creator.
Brand ambassador,
I,
it's, yeah.
I'm
So,
the ultimate guide. Yeah. I mean, so as much as I say I used to avoid it and now I embrace it, I think it can be helpful to like, okay, well, I'm going to just reframe what I'm doing for people, how I'm providing value. And sometimes that alone can just make a shift that's like, oh no, it would almost be immoral if I don't offer my product or service because it will help them. Like
yeah.
that when people can make that shift, it's like, oh, okay. Like it's not about just convincing someone. It's hey, if I can't help you, I'm going to tell you that. If I can, I'm going to.
Tell you
And
that
helping
too.
people see
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears for a second, right? You've had some things happen in your life that sort of inform kind of how you show up today and what you do. I mean, I got to say, I really love your podcast, and it's quickly becoming one that I'm referring out to other people. And your website has a very heartfelt video on there about, sort of a pretty significant event that happened in your life, and sort of how it informed the kind of approach you wanted to take to your career. You definitely have a lot going, well in your career and what you're doing, obviously with the work you're doing today. But can you touch on a little bit of that, and sort of how that is kind of a driver and motivator for you in what you do now and building this business?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit of that story you're referring to as well. So I made a career change in sales several years ago, and it involved me working in a market 2 hours from our home. And part of that was, hey, I wasn't ready to commit and
Yeah.
move our family, wanted to explore it. So ended up getting an apartment and would be gone 5 or 6 days a week. My wife and kids would come and stay a few days at a time with me. And one time while my wife was in town, we were getting ready to go home. I called her and said, "Hey, get the kids ready. I'm going to be home in 15 minutes. We'll jump in the car, drive home."
Yeah.
As I pulled into the apartments, I heard sirens and ambulances I could see coming across the fence. I pulled up to our apartment, walked in the door, and my wife was on the ground with our 6-month-old son laying there. He was barely breathing. I could tell something was clearly wrong. My wife was in tears. It seemed like seconds. I don't know how long it was, but right behind me, though, that ambulance was the paramedics. She'd called the ambulance. They came in rushing in behind me. Um, my wife, when she went to get our 6-month-old son up from his nap, he was gray, limp. He wasn't breathing. She did CPR, ultimately saved his life. And spoiler, he's okay. He's 6 years old now, and great and happy and amazing. And it was a pretty traumatic time. What we ended up finding out had happened is he'd rolled over. The pack and play had a broken slat. We knew he had a hernia, which he ended up getting surgery for soon after. But we think he just, between the hernia and this broken slat, we think he got his face caught
Uh,
down in the pack and play and suffocated. But there were a lot of tests they did. He was misdiagnosed with a heart condition. Just a lot of, no mother should have to come in and find her
no.
child limp and gray and not breathing. And so,
Uh,
um, for my wife, there was a lot of PTSD or just
sure.
stress and anxiety
Sure.
that came from that event. I had a lot of anxiety more for her because of how it
Yeah.
impacted and affected her. And it was probably about a year and a half, 2 years before she felt like she was back to normal. Part of that
Yeah.
was seeing professional help. We believe prayer had a big part of that in our faith. And what I didn't realize, and what we've kind of, my wife and I have talked about since then, is a lot of when I made that career change, I've realized I needed to step up my ability as a sales professional. And it's
Mhm.
probably dived into personal development more than I ever had in my life up to that point. And the things I learned in sales, I realized were making me a better listener with my wife. It helped me be better at talking her through the things she was feeling, the stress she was having, helping her unpack those emotions and get through that. And while I don't believe I fixed my wife in any way, I do believe that part of why I think that experience happened. I used to think that career change was to make more money. I believe now I wasn't. I believe before I made that career change, I wasn't the husband she needed, and that in doing that and developing in my job, it helped me in my life. And that's why I like to say sales is life,
Yeah.
is because it impacts every area of your life. And she talks about how I was a better, a much better listener and communicator at that time than I'd been previously in our marriage.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't remember what the question was, but that's
no,
kind of the
you hit it.
story
I
you heard.
mean, I got to say, I mean, when you and I first connected, and I said one of the reasons that I couldn't do the interview at the time that we needed to is because we had lost our great nephew the last day of school, sadly, uh, neighborhood pool party, and nobody saw him go into the water, and this little kid, 6 years old, full. I mean, one of the most devout Christians you could ever imagine. I mean, he professed his faith as a 6 year old. I think he was a little angel on earth, and he needed to be called home for bigger work, right? But you were so kind during that time, and that's just how I knew. Like, I need to know this guy. I need to become friends with him. But you were just so very compassionate about it, and I knew you had gone through that. Fortunately, yours turned out fantastic. But you were just amazing to a complete stranger like myself, and extended yourself to our family, and just the love and prayers, and those things are not lost on me, right? I think people are put in our paths for very specific reasons. Sometimes we call on them because we want to sell them something. And sometimes we're, trying to coordinate an interview for a podcast. But, I do believe there's a plan. I do know that if we pay attention, we'll figure out what that plan is. But I wanted to make sure to tell you how much that meant to me and to everyone I shared it with, because we were just in complete shock, and just,
Yeah.
you just don't anticipate it, much like you coming back to the apartment that day, and your entire life is just changed in an instant. And it's still a great outcome, but at the end of the day, I'm sure it, like you said, it made a huge, shift in kind of what you considered your priorities, both professionally and personally. And I think that's just there's a huge lesson for that. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think my audience will benefit from that greatly. And,
Yeah.
thank God that it worked out so well. And, that you guys were able to, come together as a family, and, specifically the relationship with your wife, probably took, a huge leap forward in a big way.
Yeah. My condolences to you and your family. There's nothing more heartbreaking than when things happen to children. And
Yeah,
as a parent, there's nothing worse than the feeling of hopelessness when you go through those type of experiences.
absolutely. Well, we appreciate that very much. Let's shift gears, just for a second. What is it that you would love people to, when you say sales is life, and through the work that you're doing now, where you're, educating, you're coaching, you're consulting, what is it, the big takeaway that you really want people to have when they work with Drew Norton?
Yeah, I want them to just find those things that, one, sales is life, that selling's a form of leadership. It brings abundance, it brings freedom, it's noble. And I'm committed to helping people change the way they view sales and leadership. And so to me, it isn't just, I think what you say is important, and how you say it's important. I also believe that the way you view it, the way you think about it, are equally
Yeah,
important. So often it starts with mindset, then it gets into the language, what we say, how we say it, and it's how do we show up, how do we create a strong presence for ourselves, and then just helping leaders do the same. I
yeah,
One of the other challenges I find isn't just in a business owner being able to sell, it's how do I recruit and find good salespeople. It's one of the
yeah,
most challenging hires to make in a business. And I think that once again goes back to, are we a good leader with good systems and processes? And I always, my personal belief is, when a business isn't growing like they want it to, it's either a leadership needs to grow, or there's a problem with the system and process
yeah,
in the organization. You fix you fix those two things, and growth happens. And so, equally as important to me is in helping people see the power in sales, is helping business owners and leaders and teams create strong sales organizations. How do we find and attract the right talent to our organization? Because if we don't have a strong sales team, we often don't see growth that we want.
yeah, yeah. It's almost holiday time, and one of the best gifts that you could possibly buy your friends, your family, your employees, your coworkers, or maybe just random strangers, you want to just hand out awesome stuff. This book right here makes it excellent gift. I can personalize it for you. I've got quantity discounts. If you reach out to me, I can talk to you about that. If you go to ripplecentral.com and head on over to the shop, you'll see how affordable this amazing, life-changing, career-changing book can be for you to give as a gift. Little bow on top of this thing, and you're like, hey, let me cast a stone. Let me create some ripples. Let's do it. Ho, 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 in the holiday spirit. Let's get people rippling in the upcoming holiday season. The Ripple Effect, Maximizing the Power of Relationships for Your Life and Business, the third edition, by yours truly, Steve Harper, available exclusively at ripplecentral.com. Technically, that's not true. You could get it at Amazon, but those guys keep tearing up my inventory. Like, literally, I send them the books, and then they tear them up, and then they send them back, and they want me to send them new books. Don't like that. Big corporate, big box BS going on over there. Just go to ripplecentral.com. I will ship it directly to you. No bows included, because you don't want my bows. They're no good. They don't look good at all. Third graders probably do better bows than me. But the book, awesome, and makes an excellent gift. Holiday gift. It's almost that time, my friends. The Ripple Effect and some of our other things in the shop might just tickle your fancy to give as a gift. this holiday season. And you touched on this earlier, and just want to come back and come full circle. And then, I want to ask you a few ripple oriented questions. I want to be respectful of your time because I know you are busy. But you mentioned that something that is near and dear to my heart, which I often say from the stage or when I'm in front of an audience or doing a corporate engagement, is leadership doesn't actually have to come with the title. So you mentioned, helping people lean fully into becoming leaders. What is it about that really, floats your boat, really gets you excited and motivated to help them understand that?
Yeah, a couple things. Once again, I think it's just that natural progression of not seeing myself as a leader and recognizing, hey, no, you are, um,
Yeah.
regardless sometimes of my own title or role in an organization. And so part of it is I want people that don't feel like they are a leader feel like, hey, you can be one, regardless of of where you're at. And I think on the flip side too, being in sales, I often saw people promoted into leadership because of their sales ability
Yeah.
who weren't necessarily good leaders either. And which is
Amen. I've seen
scary. And
that so many times.
it happens a lot in sales. I mean,
Yeah.
every organization can probably say there's bad leaders or managers in positions that shouldn't be. So I think it's like, how do we create a organization where we have, a mission and core values that we are driven by and led by, and not just revenue and metrics at the end of the day,
Yeah.
because those things are important and they're not the most important piece of it. I think it's having space for both. So yeah, I where initially I started off looking to just do more sales training. I'm working a lot more now with businesses that are struggling to hire and build their sales teams, and how a lot of times it's once again they creating a strong foundation and a strong culture, and attracting the right people, not just
Yeah.
anyone that's in the sell. So
I love that. I love that. And you're doing obviously great work. At the very end, we'll make sure that everybody knows how to get to your website and get on all your social platforms. But if you're okay with it, just to, as we wind down, I always like to finish these interviews off with a few ripple connection questions. These are questions that are no gotchas. They're just fun to ask and fun to answer. And they really give our audience just a little bit of insight as to who you are as an individual, if you're okay with it.
yeah, totally.
Cool. So, what did the 7-year-old Drew want to be when he grew up?
Oh, the 7-year-old me. I think the 7-year-old me wanted to either be a firefighter or fly planes or or something like that. And I'm going to say fly planes because I ended up getting my pilot's license a couple of years ago. So
Oh,
I
awesome.
did check off that dream, even though that's not something I do as a career. It's something I do because I've enjoyed it. So
Ticks the box
but,
though now currently.
yeah.
That's a good answer. I love that. What does the current Drew want to be when he grows up? If you weren't doing
Ooh,
what you're doing
well,
now, where would you take that?
see, I feel like I am doing what I want to do right now.
Good answer.
I started coaching and consulting about a year and a half ago, and it's brought a whole different set of challenges into my life, kind of rebranding myself, changing what I'm doing, changing my career. And it's been the most enjoyable thing I've ever done. So right now I don't think there is anything else I want to be doing.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's totally acceptable for
Except
sure.
for more time with family and kids, whatever that is.
Yeah. My kids are out of the house. I can tell you they grow up fast, and it's important to spend as much time. It's part of the reason I became an entrepreneur, is just to be there and be accessible, and coach the soccer teams and do all things that the kids would allow me to do until I became uncool to do them. But it's magic, and it's sadly it's you just wish you could capture it in a bottle, but you can't. So enjoy that time as much as you possibly can. What's one book that changed your life?
Oh, I feel like it's cliche, but the first one would have probably been Rich Dad Poor Dad. Um, I read that book and bought my first rental property a month or two later, and
No
I
kidding.
was in sales, but quit my 9 to 5 sales job a few months after that. um, there have been several other impactful ones. If I had to say number two, it might be "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan
Ooh,
Martell.
oh,
It's
that's a
really
good one.
changed the way I view how I spend my time.
I love it.
So, those two have been really impactful.
So, who in your personal life or maybe in your professional life do you kind of consider your all-time hero?
Personal life, in a lot of ways, is my dad who interrupted our podcast earlier.
That's awesome. I
Um,
think his ear is probly on the door, making sure you answer that question correctly. But
um, uh, he uh, he was a seminary and institute teacher for our church, a religious teacher, but just someone who always has lived what he believes and been a great example to me. And it's funny, he can't actually give me a lot of career advice. And anytime I ask for it, it's always like I didn't expect that, and seems like it's just what I needed. So probably him, as far as in my personal life goes. Professionally, oh, I don't know. There's probably a lot of people I could list, but for different reasons. I don't think I could pick just one.
yeah,
So
fair enough. I mean, yeah, we'll they probably know who they are hopefully by this point, right? But if not, maybe you can say, hey, I didn't say your name, but I was thinking about you during this interview. You got to check it out. So,
I think it's been different people in different seasons is
sure.
professionally. Yeah.
From a sales perspective, because I feel like you and I probably read a lot of the same books. We probably had a lot of the same tapes or CDs playing in our cars as we were young pup salespeople. Who do you consider one of your, your go-to resources for that genre?
Yeah, I think really my favorite has been Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference.
Yeah,
Might be my favorite sales book, even though it's not even he doesn't even brand it as a sales
no,
book. It's
he
a book
doesn't.
about negotiation,
Exactly.
and I just think there's so many powerful ways you can word things and write things and or just say things that can really impact the way someone thinks.
Yeah,
So he is probably that is probably my favorite one, just because I feel like if you're not in sales or don't view yourself in sales, he says a little different way to say it, but life is a negotiation.
yeah,
I think you could apply that to everything too.
yeah,
So I think that's a great one if you just are like, I want to get better at speaking and communicating with people. And it can kind of get you down a rabbit hole of other sales books.
yeah. I love it. I love it. Maybe last three questions, but when you hear the words "the ripple effect," what does that conjure up for you?
A saying I used to have a mentor say all the time is that the difference makes.
I love
And
that.
I think that's what comes in my mind with that idea of like a ripple, like what's the difference I'm making and what's the difference that makes for others. And a lot of times you can't see that,
Yeah,
sometimes the way you impact one person's life can go on to change hundreds of others. And you
yeah,
don't know. On that note, sometimes in today's world, you've got to post more than ever. I don't know how many times 6 months or 12 months I've shared something on social media where someone finally reaches out to me and they tell me thank you. And I'm like, you've never liked or commented on anything I've ever said,
yeah.
but people are watching. And
They are.
so, yeah, you don't know the, the power that just doing good can have on others.
Absolutely. And you are clearly doing that without question. What ripple could I look to create for you?
I would love to find opportunities for if someone's looking for speakers in
Mhm.
sales, or someone is in a position where it's like, hey, we need help with our sales organization. Those are the people I want to help.
You got it.
So
That's an easy one. I will definitely keep my radar tuned for opportunities to send your way for sure. My last question is, how would you like people to find you? What's the best way? I mean, you got a beautiful website. You've got these social handles. What's the best for you in terms of people to get exposure to your content? You've got this great podcast, so please plug that as well. But how do you best want our audience to be able to engage with your work?
one of two ways. If you look up the Everyday Sales Leader, I'm on almost every platform, so you can find and connect with me there.
It's a great handle,
If
by the
you
way. I mean, it's a really, I love it.
We have a podcast, The Everyday Leader, which that name's kind of a spinoff of
Yeah.
that, and I have two other co-hosts where we talk about leadership. And if you want, uh, because I said this is something I'm working on a lot, I'll share something with your listeners if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Um, if you are struggling at building your sales organization, I have a quiz you can take and a guide that will come with it to break down the assessment of that quiz. If you just text quiz to 928 928 5985, That quiz will help you see, okay, where's our organization currently at from a sales perspective, with a guide on how to build and fix it out. And yeah, you can get a hold of that for free.
I love it. Fantastic. And we will definitely make sure to put that in the show notes along with your bio. Drew, thank you first and foremost for coming into my life, for having such an open and honest conversation about, this topic, which can be tough and difficult for a lot of people. I think you're really going to open people's perspective and eyes into why they need to spend more time, getting better at it, regardless of, like you said, whether that's your job day to day, or how you're going to apply it in the other aspects of your life. The way that you deliver your message, you can tell you come through with a very authentic and very heartfelt approach. And I love interviews like this, because just being able to bring and, shine a light on people that are doing great work and making a huge difference out there in the world is really what I live for. So I'm so grateful that we finally made this happen, and that we could do it. But you're stuck with me as a friend. I hate to tell you. So, we've got more to do, I'm sure, together down the road.
Awesome.
I'm so grateful for the time. But I just want to tell our audience, thank you for joining for another great episode. Obviously, follow Drew, check out his website, text that number so that you can, take advantage of that quiz. And we'll be back with another episode very soon. But Drew, until then, ripple on.